What if I told you America isn't bracing for its next recession, it's already living through one? While leaders in Washington claim the economy remains strong, the reality on the ground tells a brutally different story. Debt is ballooning, foreclosures accelerating, state budgets stretched to breaking points. In America today, the risk isn't future economic collapse, it's current reality. According to Moody's Analytics, close to one-third of the entire U.S. economy is already operating in recession-like conditions. Retirement systems running dry, credit ratings slipping, families fleeing their home states by the hundreds of thousands, searching for stability that no longer exists. Before we count down the 12 states cracking first as America drifts deeper into what could become its most serious downturn in decades, subscribe for weekly breakdowns of the economic transformations reshaping this country. What used to be called the American dream now feels more like a ticking timer. This isn't speculation or distant warning. It's unfolding right now, and these are the states starting to break. Number 12, Colorado. Colorado used to symbolize modern prosperity, thriving tech hubs, outdoor wealth, steady growth. But beneath that polished image sits an economy far more fragile than it appears. Behind Denver and Boulder's picturesque skylines, warning signs spread quickly. Home prices remain stubbornly high, median hovering around $570,000, while typical households bring in roughly $92,000 yearly. That imbalance means residents must dedicate nearly 46% of take-home pay just to manage standard mortgages unsustainable for most families. The job market is cracking. Statewide unemployment climbed to 4.3%, highest since early 2021, fueled by sweeping tech sector layoffs. In 2024 alone, over 11,000 positions disappeared as Google, Zoom, and Salesforce scaled back after pandemic overexpansion. Commercial real estate fallout is especially visible. Downtown Denver office space sits over 31% vacant, an all-time high, forcing landlords to slash rents by 40% just to attract tenants. Commercial property values already fell 25% from 2022 highs. Delinquent business loans doubled in 1 year. State finances reflect the same downward trend. Colorado faces projected $1.6 billion budget gap by 2026, driven by declining income tax revenue and rapidly growing pension commitments. The Public Employees Retirement Association alone carries $35 billion in unfunded liabilities, a looming fiscal threat growing larger each year. Even tourism, long Colorado's economic safety valve, is losing momentum. Visitor spending dropped 7% in 2024. Ski resorts saw traffic fall 10%, hurt by fewer international travelers and soaring lodging prices. Outside major cities, pressure is more severe. Communities like Pueblo and Mesa County see foreclosure rates climbing toward 1 in every 310 homes, among hardest hit in the Mountain West. Colorado's boom is concealing risky collision of factors: sky-high housing costs, weakening employment, collapsing commercial space demand. If recession intensifies, the state's heavy debt load and inflated property values may give way all at once, like massive snowpack breaking loose. Number 11, Mississippi. Mississippi has carried the label of America's poorest state for decades. But 2025 could mark when its already delicate economy finally gives way. The numbers tell a sobering story. Median household income sits at just $49,111, roughly 60% of national average, leaving little margin for error. Poverty affects 18.1% of population, meaning nearly 1 out of every 5 Mississippians struggles below poverty line. Job conditions offer little relief. Unemployment climbed to 5.2%, while labor force participation fell to 55.6%, lowest rate in entire country. Federal support dependence makes situation more precarious. Nearly 46% of Mississippi's total budget is funded by Washington's dangerous reliance as federal spending cuts loom. Housing trends flash warning signs. Though median home values remain relatively low, around $176,000, rising mortgage rates and stagnant wages have sidelined buyers. Foreclosure filings jumped 32% compared to last year, hitting Jackson and Greenville especially hard. Greenville is projected to see steepest home price decline nationally, values expected to fall 16.6% by mid-2025. Commercial activity weakens across smaller cities, where vacancy rates rose 18%. Small businesses disappear under weight of record-high consumer credit card debt. Adding to strain, aging infrastructure. Nearly 28% of state bridges considered structurally deficient. Debt per taxpayer nearing $7,800. Healthcare conditions deteriorating simultaneously. Since 2026, rural hospitals shut doors, leaving over 300,000 residents without nearby emergency care access. Mississippi's combination of deep poverty, low educational attainment, and limited economic diversity leaves it especially vulnerable. If federal aid contracts and inflation continues eroding tight household budgets, many small towns could face something worse than routine recession. Prolonged systemic breakdown unfolding slowly, relentlessly, with lasting consequences. Number 10. Maryland. For decades, Maryland's economic strength has been tightly linked to Washington, D.C. That connection is now turning into serious liability. The state is squeezed by risky combination, high living expenses, cooling job growth, heavy exposure to potential federal budget cuts. More than 28,700 federal jobs located within Maryland's borders gives it highest federal employment exposure ratio in country. When Congress delays funding or reduces agency budgets, those paychecks disappear almost overnight, along with tax revenue Maryland depends on. Credit agencies already sounding alarms. In 2025, Moody's lowered Maryland's credit outlook, pointing directly to state overdependence on federal activity. Everyday affordability slips out of reach. Median home prices sit near $430,000. Even with median household income of $98,400, residents struggle to keep pace with inflation, rising property taxes, and mortgage rates averaging 7%. Strain shows in housing market. Foreclosures jumped 29% since 2023. Baltimore alone now accounts for over 95 bank-owned REO properties, among highest concentrations nationally. Commercial real estate weakens just as quickly. Office vacancy rates across Baltimore Metro climb past 22%. Rents drop below $19 per square foot, lowest in 10 years. Even Montgomery County's once booming biotech corridor loses momentum, shedding jobs as venture capital investment falls 40% compared to last year. State fiscal outlook continues darkening. Maryland projecting $700 million budget gap by 2026. Pension obligations nearing $25 billion. Rainy Day Fund holding only $2.9 billion could drain in under 12 months if severe recession takes hold. The contradiction is striking. Despite being one of most highly educated states, Maryland may be among first to feel post-federal economic slowdown pain. As Washington tightens spending, economy built around federal dollars risks coming apart, revealing just how fragile Maryland's apparent prosperity has become. Number 9. Delaware. With population just over 1 million, Delaware often flies under radar, but beneath quiet reputation lies one of most financially vulnerable economies in country. The economic model leans heavily on corporate registrations, banking, and chemical manufacturing, all three pillars now under strain. Falling corporate profits and shrinking federal transfers squeeze revenues at worst possible time. Corporate tax collections, making up nearly 30% of Delaware's budget, dropped 14% in 2024, steepest decline in 20 years. As more companies choose to incorporate in business-friendly states like Texas and Florida, Delaware's long-standing role as America's corporate home base rapidly loses ground. Erosion already shows in state finances. Delaware projecting $1.1 billion budget deficit for 2025, roughly $1,150 per resident. Families feel pressure just as acutely. Median home prices hover around $370,000, while typical household earns about $76,000 yearly, mismatch driving debt-to-income ratios into dangerous territory. Housing affordability sharply deteriorated. Homeowners now need to spend about 38% of monthly income just to cover standard mortgage. Foreclosure filings surged 27% compared to last year, hitting Newcastle County and Dover especially hard. Labor market isn't providing relief. Unemployment climbed to 4.6%. Job growth in core industries like finance and manufacturing fell 11% over past 12 months. Inflation remains stubborn, food and energy prices rising over 6% annually. Long-term obligations compound risk. Delaware's state pension system carries roughly $8.4 billion liabilities, only about 65% funded. Local governments struggle to meet pension promises for teachers and police officers. Because of Delaware's small size, economic shocks hit harder and spread faster. When even one major employer scales back, entire counties feel impact almost immediately. Consumer stress already evident. Credit card delinquency rates reaching 6.3%, among highest in Mid-Atlantic. Delaware's image as calm, stable, corporate refuge is fracturing. As revenues slide, pension gaps widen, living costs climb. The first state may find itself among earliest casualties when next major recession fully takes hold. Number 8. Alaska. Alaska has always lived and died by oil. When crude prices slip, shockwaves travel through entire state. In 2025, that long-standing reliance has become serious weakness. Petroleum revenue still covers close to 40% of Alaska's operating budget, but numbers no longer work. State needs oil prices around $76 per barrel just to break even. Yet prices lingered near $71 for months. That gap forced Juneau to drain financial reserves at unprecedented pace. Alaska now facing $1.2 billion budget deficit. The permanent fund, once seen as untouchable, increasingly gets tapped simply to meet payroll obligations. Federal support adds another risk layer. Roughly 40% of Alaska's total spending comes from federal dollars, dangerous dependency if Washington moves to cut budgets during nationwide downturn. State is shrinking. For 3 straight years, Alaska lost over 12,000 residents annually as workers head to lower 48 for better pay and lower living costs. Despite exodus, housing remains expensive. In Anchorage, median home prices still around $394,000, while median household income sits near $86,300, leaving affordability strained even as people move away. Job market tells similar story. Employment in oil and gas steadily collapsed, falling from nearly 13,500 workers a decade ago to fewer than 8,900 today. Tourism, the state's second major economic pillar, also weakening. Visitor activity dropped 9% in 2024. Cruise traffic hasn't returned to pre-pandemic levels. Housing market stalling. Home sales down 18% year over year. Inventory surged 32% as more residents put properties on market before leaving. Conditions harsher outside urban centers. Unemployment in rural areas climbed past 8%. Cost of basic necessities staggering. Milk sells for $7.50 a gallon in some regions. Bread cost over $6. Alaska's reputation for rugged self-reliance tested by global economic slowdown. With oil royalties shrinking, population loss accelerating, no diversified industry ready to step in, the last frontier risks turning into something different. Vast, breathtaking landscape slowly hollowed out by economic decline. Number 7. New Mexico. New Mexico caught in dangerous overlap. Federal dependence and energy sector volatility combination becoming lethal during recession. Nearly 43% of state budget funded by federal dollars. Oil and gas account for roughly 30% of overall economic output. When both revenue streams weaken simultaneously, state has very little room to absorb shock. More than 22,000 federal workers now face risk of layoffs or prolonged pay freezes. Budget analysts warn even modest 10% reduction in federal contracts could erase about 3% of state GDP almost instantly. Energy side equally unstable. In 2024, oil royalty revenue dropped 18%, prompting officials in Santa Fe to forecast $900 million budget shortfall by 2026. Housing market, once viewed as relatively insulated, shows clear strain. Albuquerque's median home price sits around $327,000, fallen 9% since 2023, while available inventory jumped nearly 25%. Foreclosure filings doubled in 1 year. Mortgage delinquency rates stand at 4.8%, among highest in Southwest. For many residents, financial pressure is relentless. State poverty rate, 18.4%. With median household income just $61,000, wages fail to keep up with rising rents and food costs. Job growth nearly stalled, advancing only 0.4%. Youth unemployment climbed past 9%. Violent crime rates, already 70% higher than national average, discourage new investment and business expansion. Long-term liabilities add instability. New Mexico's public pension system carries $14.6 billion unfunded obligations, only 62% funded, leaving future retirees increasingly exposed. Efforts to diversify economy faltered. Tourism, film production, and manufacturing, all seen as potential stabilizers, contracted in 2024 as consumer demand weakened. With oil revenue shrinking, federal funding under threat, living costs continuing to rise, New Mexico positioned to feel every aftershock of national downturn. What was once considered quiet opportunity for investors, quickly turning into one of country's most vulnerable economies, propped up more by subsidies and optimism than sustainable growth. Number 6. Nevada. Nevada's post-pandemic surge clearly ran out of steam. The Silver State, long powered by entertainment, rapid construction, and speculative growth, now experiencing one of sharpest economic slowdowns in country. Warning signs flash everywhere. Foreclosure filings climb to 1 in every 326 homes, highest rate nationwide. Unemployment jumped to 5.4%, up sharply from 3.9% just 12 months ago. Las Vegas, once emblem of nonstop expansion, became ground zero for housing stress. Active listings ballooned nearly 45% year over year, marking 12 straight months of steep inventory growth. Though median home prices dipped only 2.2% so far, industry insiders brace for additional 10% to 12% drop as tourism weakens and layoffs spread. States' heavy reliance on unpredictable revenue sources amplifies damage. Gaming taxes alone supply about 42% of Nevada's general fund, yet casino revenues already down 8% compared to 2022 levels. Commercial real estate unraveling even faster. Office vacancy rates climbed to 24%. Delinquent commercial loans surged 38% in just 1 year. At household level, financial pressure intense. Average monthly mortgage payment in Las Vegas now exceeds $2,780, while median household income sits around $78,000. That imbalance forces many families to devote over 43% of take-home pay to housing costs. Consumer debt mounting, credit card delinquency rates reaching record 5.9% statewide. Tourism, Nevada's backbone, no longer providing cushion. Visitor numbers fallen 7%. Convention bookings down 15% as businesses tighten travel budgets. Slowdown rippled into construction, where employment dropped 12%. In Clark County alone, over 14,000 homes sit vacant, either waiting to be sold or tied up in foreclosure proceedings. State tax revenue declined 6.3% in 2024, prompting warnings of potential $1 billion budget gap by 2026. The illusion of endless prosperity is fading fast, exposing economy weighed down by debt, speculation, and over-reliance on chance. Nevada's downturn won't unfold quietly. It's shaping up to be sudden, highly visible, and deeply painful, transforming America's playground into one of earliest victims of next major economic collapse. Number 5. Louisiana. Louisiana's economy barely staying afloat for years. Now the current is pulling it under. With half of state budget dependent on federal funding and nearly 19% of population living in poverty, Louisiana ranks among most economically vulnerable states. Typical household earns about $56,000 yearly, yet cost of basics, rent, insurance, utilities, necessities jump 14% in just 12 months, leaving many families stretched beyond limits. Nowhere is strain more visible than New Orleans. Once praised for resilience, the city now considered weakest housing market in United States. Home values already dropped 7.1% over past year, with another 8% decline expected by mid-2025. In Orleans Parish, median home price slipped to $245,000. Average time property sits on market ballooned from 41 days to 74. Foreclosure activity surged 34% statewide. Roughly 1 in every 42 homes now classified as distressed. Louisiana's traditional backbone, oil and gas, no longer provides stability. Employment in energy sector fell 11% since 2022, as volatile oil prices and tightening federal environmental regulations discouraged new investment. Insurance costs became crushing. Hurricane losses from storms like Ida and Laura exceeded $20 billion, prompting several major insurers to exit state altogether, driving premiums to unsustainable levels for homeowners and businesses. Commercial real estate sliding downhill. Office vacancy rates climbed to 23% in Baton Rouge and 25% in Shreveport. Retail vacancies reached 11% highest in 2 decades. Long-term liabilities piling up. Louisiana's public pension system carries $18.9 billion unfunded obligations. State projected to face fiscal deficit exceeding $1.3 billion by 2026. Louisiana confronts perfect storm. Climate exposure, chronic economic stagnation, political gridlock all colliding at once. Once economic pulse of Gulf Coast, state now risks becoming first in Deep South to slip into genuine financial insolvency with no clear safeguards strong enough to stop it. Number 4. Florida. Florida's recent boom didn't just cool off, it's starting to look like delayed detonation. After 3 years of rapid population growth and relentless construction, stress fractures spread across the entire state. Florida currently contains 9 of 15 most overvalued housing markets in country concentration unmatched anywhere else. Cities like Tampa, prices inflated 42%, Cape Coral 37%, and Northport nearly 40% have drifted far beyond sustainable levels. Statewide median home price climbed to $417,000, while median household income lags at just $67,917. At today's mortgage rates near 7%, typical family would need to earn close to $120,000 yearly simply to qualify for average home. That imbalance already triggering foreclosure surge. 1 out of every 242 homes in Florida now in default, second worst state nationally. In Lakeland, situation more extreme. 1 in every 172 homes entering foreclosure, highest rate anywhere in U.S. Insurance became next breaking point. Hurricane Ian alone caused $112.9 billion damage. Since 2022, homeowners insurance premiums jumped over 45%. Average policy now costs about $6,000 yearly, roughly 3 times national average. As major insurers like Farmers and AAA pull out, millions scramble for limited, expensive coverage. Rental market shows strain. Vacancy rates climb to 10%. HOA fees rising fast, increasing 15% over past year. Wages fail to keep pace. Job growth slowed to just 0.8%, even as inflation remains elevated at 4.2%. Tourism, pillar of Florida's economy, no longer provides usual support. Revenue from visitors down 6%. Hospitality sector shed 18,000 jobs in 2024 alone. Despite strong population trends, Florida heading straight into perfect storm. Overpriced housing, collapsing insurance system, slowing migration, converging at once. Investors who bought near 2022 peak may be staring at losses of 30% to 40%. What once looked like sun-soaked promise of affordability and stability rapidly dissolving, revealing boom that may have always been more illusion than reality. Number 3. California. California's economy, once powerful enough to rank as world's 5th largest, now buckles under strain of years of excess and imbalance. State facing staggering $58 billion budget deficit, largest ever recorded, draining $12 billion from reserves simply to keep basic operations afloat. Housing costs remain at crisis center. Median home price climbed to eye-watering $825,000, requiring annual income of roughly $237,000 to afford. In reality, median household earns only $96,500 less than half what's needed to buy average home. That gap pushed affordability to historic lows. Monthly mortgage payments now average around $5,900, swallowing 36% of household income, highest housing burden in country. Unemployment risen to 5.5%. Californians voting with their feet. In 2024 alone, 239,000 residents left state, marking largest domestic population loss in nation. Behind scenes, long-term liabilities pile up fast. California carrying $244.9 billion in unfunded pension obligations, along with $20 billion in unemployment insurance debt. Public education under pressure, facing $5 billion funding shortfalls. State's most reliable revenue engine, sputtering. Tax receipts from Silicon Valley dropped 21% as tech profits contract and layoffs accelerate. Commercial real estate unraveling at pace few expected. Office vacancy rates reached 28.8% in San Francisco and 22% in Los Angeles. Statewide commercial foreclosures now exceed 187 properties monthly, nearly 30% of national total. Even landmark assets aren't immune. Iconic LA gas company tower, once valued at $632 million, now facing foreclosure at fraction of that price, roughly $200 million. Social and living costs continue climbing alongside financial turmoil. Homelessness surpassed 181,000 people statewide. Median rent in Los Angeles reached $2,950 monthly. Energy prices sit 42% above national average. Utility bills rose another 11% in 2024 alone. Toxic mix of fiscal mismanagement, heavy regulation, and extreme housing costs transformed Golden State into cautionary tale. California's economy is still enormous, but like its famous cliffs, it's wearing away rapidly, one collapse after another. Number 2. Illinois. Illinois isn't merely short on cash, it's fundamentally broken at structural level. Years of corruption, unchecked spending, and pension mismanagement transformed state into textbook example of long-term economic deterioration. Scale of problem is staggering. Each Illinois taxpayer effectively on hook for about $38,800 just to cover existing obligations. In total, state carries $172.8 billion in unfunded liabilities, placing it near bottom of national fiscal rankings at 48th ahead of only New Jersey and Connecticut. Looking ahead, outlook doesn't improve. Budget projections for 2026 show deficit ranging between $3.2 billion and $5.1 billion. Even under optimistic growth assumptions, numbers don't add up. Teachers' retirement system, once viewed as backbone of Illinois public workforce, now only 34% funded and could exhaust resources within next 20 years. That reality puts tens of thousands of retired educators in precarious position, relying on a system that simply isn't mathematically sustainable. Chicago, state's economic heart, buckles under similar pressure. Property taxes climbed 16% since 2021, while violent crime surged 34% over past 5 years. Businesses pulling out of downtown core, leaving office buildings increasingly empty. Vacancy rates reached 18.8%. Average rents fallen sharply to $27.30 per square foot, down from $34 before pandemic. Across metro area, nearly 1,976 bank-owned REO properties sit unused, highest concentration anywhere in country. Population trend adds another stress layer. Illinois lost 84,000 residents in 2024 alone, marking 9th consecutive year of decline. Each family that leaves shrinks tax base further, deepening state's already dangerous debt spiral. Living costs continue rising. Electricity prices run 18% above national average. When adjusted for inflation, household incomes barely moved since 2019. What makes Illinois' situation especially dire? Lack of easy solution. Raising taxes accelerates outmigration, cutting spending risks defaulting on promises already made to workers and retirees. That leaves states stuck in no-win scenario, fiscal time bomb quietly ticking. When next recession tightens credit markets, Illinois could become first major state since Great Depression forced to openly confront insolvency, not as political failure, but as unavoidable mathematical reality. Number 1. New Jersey. New Jersey's financial emergency stands apart because the clock is already almost at zero. State auditors issued stark warning. New Jersey has just 2 days' worth of operating reserves on hand, a thinnest financial cushion of any state in country. When broken down, each taxpayer effectively responsible for about $44,500 simply to keep state functioning. Total unfunded liabilities ballooned past $220 billion burden, continuing to grow despite years of tax increases. Pension system highlights just how deep problem runs. Teachers' Pension Fund, largest in New Jersey, funded at only 34.7%, weakest major public pension plan in the United States. Even with repeated efforts to raise revenue, debt curve keeps climbing. Looking ahead to 2026, state projecting $5.3 billion budget gap. Its much-praised rainy day fund could wipe out in single quarter if revenues slip by as little as 5%. Housing pressures adding fuel to fire. New Jersey now holds second highest foreclosure rate nationally, 1 in every 359 homes in default. In Atlantic City, situation far worse, roughly 1 in 200 homes already in foreclosure. Median home prices surged 19% year over year to $539,000, creating classic housing bubble conditions just as inventory rises and mortgage rates linger near 7%. Commercial real estate unraveling alongside residential market. Office vacancy rates in Newark, Jersey City corridor climb past 19.4%. Commercial sector alone seeing about 42 foreclosures monthly. Everyday costs continue rising faster than incomes. Property taxes now average $9,800 per household yearly, highest in country. Energy prices sit 33% above national average. Insurance premiums added another 12% increase in 2024. Yet, for all those costs, economic growth remains anemic. State GDP expanded just 0.7%, well below national pace. This is core contradiction of New Jersey's economy, relatively high incomes paired with even higher obligations. Residents earn more but retain less. Small businesses struggle under layers of regulation. Infrastructure spending barely makes dent in aging roads and rail systems. The picture is bleak. The Garden State is overtaxed, heavily indebted, and rapidly running out of options. When recession pressures fully take hold, New Jersey won't be dealing with routine budget problem. It will be confronting existential fiscal crisis. A collapse decades in making is no longer theoretical. It's standing right at the door. Across America, 1/3 of the economy is already contracting. These 12 states aren't waiting for recession, they're living it. The question isn't whether collapse will spread. The question is how fast, how far, and whether anyone will be able to stop it. If this breakdown opened your eyes to what's really happening beneath the surface, subscribe and share, because what's unfolding in these states today is coming for the rest of America tomorrow.